Hello everyone, and today we're gonna take a look at Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader in 2024. So this game launched exclusively for the Nintendo GameCube. It launched in North America on November 18th of 2001. Makes me feel old saying that. And it came to Europe on May the 3rd. 2002. The reason for such a big gap is because that's when the GameCube launched in Europe. So this was released as a GameCube launch title, and it was an incredibly successful game. It was one of the highest selling games in the UK, at least. It was the best selling launch title for the GameCube. It outsold Luigi's Mansion. So let's take a look into the game and see why it was so successful. So Rogue Squadron 2 was released exclusively, as we said, for the GameCube. So again, if you do own a Nintendo GameCube or a Nintendo Wii, you can play it on real hardware, and the experience is pretty good on real hardware. Now, when it comes to emulation, this game was always seen as impossible, because this game really, despite being a launch title, pushed the limits of the GameCube hardware. There was certain things that were just incredible about the game. And what's even more incredible is this looked stunning, but also ran at 60 FPS. I mean, you can't get that out of modern games. You got to choose between good visuals and performance, whereas in the GameCube era, you could have both, really. That was one of the things about that era that was so striking there. So emulation-wise, it does run fairly reasonable. Dolphin is probably the best option, and it will stutter on even the most modern of hardware. And this footage that you're looking at is all under emulation because I didn't get my HDMI adapter for the GameCube until yesterday. So I did play a bit of it on real hardware, but I couldn't capture any footage for it, unfortunately. So all the footage that you're seeing in this video is emulation, running on an RTX 4080 with a Core i7 12700KF, and even then it can still stutter. Most of this is like a first run for the level and on the emulator. So we will get a few stutters. They do get better the more you play it, because again the shader cache gets built up. But yeah, this is quite a tough game to run. It can run on the Steam Deck, for example. It runs okay. Again, you'll get stutters. It also runs on the Xbox Series X. Fine. It ran at 4K. This footage you're looking at is 4K rendering here. But yeah, on the PC it will stutter because it was a difficult game to run for a long time. Dolphin 5.0 managed to resolve that quite a few years ago, and again it just looks absolutely stunning. You should check it out under emulation if you have to pick it up on real hardware. It is a fairly cheap game, I have to say. It isn't that expensive for a GameCube game, at least. You can pick it up fairly cheap. Again, this just because it was one of the best-selling GameCube launch titles, then it isn't. Strangely enough, it isn't massively desirable, despite it being such a good game. So take advantage of that and pick it up on real hardware, and enjoy it on real hardware, because it is one of the GameCube's hidden gems, almost. Yes, it absolutely does hold up today, and one of the main reasons why it does hold up is its presentation. Don't forget, this game was released over 20 years ago as a launch title for a 6th gen console, and visually it holds up. This was one of the first real Star Wars games that is cinematic. It was one of the most cinematic games, and I don't mean that just in its visuals, but its audio was incredible. The music, particularly the way it uses John Williams' score, is incredible. It is very authentic and feels exactly the same as the movies, the original trilogy did. And that was the cool thing, because you could only really get that kind of experience in the arcades. You did have some PC games that were quite cinematic. Dark Forces had the LucasArts style, cartoony style cutscenes. And then Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight had the live action cutscenes. But this was what this felt. Playing it on an emulator just now in 4K definitely feels like you're watching the movie. That opening mission is one of the best opening levels of any game. The Death Star assault, the Battle of Yavin there is incredible. The opening is shot for shot. Factor 5 have done an incredible job of recreating it. Gameplay-wise, the gameplay is fairly simple. It is an arcade-style shooter. It's not like a flight simulator. It's not like the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter games. It's not like them. But I do love the gameplay is pretty good. You know, you just kind of point and shoot, and it's fairly simple. It does introduce more complex objectives and more complex things, and you do get different crafts in the game, different wings, shall we say. You've got, of course, the X-Wing, you've got the A-Wing, the Y-Wing, the B-Wing, and the Snowspeeder from Hoth. You also get the Millennium Falcon as well to pilot later on in the game as well, which is pretty cool. I love the way you select the crafts in the game. The menu for this is fantastic. You basically just wander around the hangar. You play as Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles, and you just wander around as them in third person, and you can walk up to the craft and you can select them there, or you can get an explanation, and I love the way they explain it. The game does have 10 missions, and each mission will recommend a craft as well. And as well, you can change crafts with in mid mission, that you can dock with the main ship and change crafts if you want in the middle of a mission, which is pretty cool. They all have the different strengths and weaknesses. You can when a level is completed, you can go back and play it with any of the available crafts, which is quite cool actually. It does add replay value, because again, they have different strengths, different weaknesses, and the game explains this to you quite well. I love the voiceover guy who does the mission voiceovers and the craft voiceovers. It's really good. The presentation here is top notch here. I love the way that it plays actual scenes from the movie, which is pretty cool, in the background of the menus. That's again awesome there. Gameplay wise, again, it does hold up fairly well. Again, it's fairly simple. It is again an arcade shooter, and again, you can play in first person mode, which is kind of cool. And you've got the fully modeled 3D cockpits of the different crafts, which are awesome as well. The missions do take place in most of the original trilogy's big battles. Again, it starts with the Death Star, blowing up the Death Star in the Battle of Yavin. It moves on. There's other missions in between. You get the Battle of Hoth as well, where you get the Snowspeeder and you have to tie up the what they call again, the walkers. You have to tie them up and knock them down with the tow cable. That's pretty cool. Similar to Shadows of the Empire. But one of the things you notice about this is, in a single generation, Shadows of the Empire was an N64 and PC game in the 90s. And in a single generation, the graphical leap is incredible. Like, just going from the Battle of Hoth in Shadows of the Empire to Battle of Hoth in Rogue Squadron 2, you see the generational leap was huge from the N64 to the Gamecube. And that's one of the things that really strikes you about it. Mission-wise, they're kind of similar there as well. But yeah, just the graphical leap is incredible. The Battle of Hoth can only be done so many ways, because it played out the same mostly as does the movie there. I would love to see a Rogue Squadron trilogy remake or remaster. I'd love to see that. I don't think there's very much to do to Rogue Squadron 2 and 3, because visually they look good. I mean, even playing, again, upscale to 4K, these games are incredible. These games look incredible. And it's kind of sad that Rogue Squadron 2 and 3 are stuck on the GameCube, basically. Again, we can play them on the PC via emulation. They are quite difficult to run. So you are going to need a reasonably beefy PC to run them. Steam Deck can run them, but again, you're going to get stutters there as the shader compilation. It does get better the more you play it, again, because it compiles more. It has more and more shader data to look at there. So the emulator does run a bit better the more you play it there. But again, I'd love to see this. Night Dive Studios, love to see them tackle this. They did the Star Wars Dark Forces remastered, and they did a great job, especially with the cutscenes there. I don't think there's a huge amount to do to get this running. Upscale it, you know, that'd be it, really. That's it, because the controls are fine. they're excellent. Made good use of the GameCube controller there. There's not much to it. It's just they basically fly around and shoot things. You do have limited instructions that you can give to your wingmen. You can use the D-pad. You can tell them to engage the TIE fighters. You can tell them to form up. You can tell them to flee as well, so you can give them simple instructions. They can get them to focus on the objectives. You do have bonus power-ups that are hidden in different levels. They can improve your craft's durability, targeting computer, things like that, and you do get a performance rating at the end of each mission, so it's based against like the time it took to complete each mission, the number of enemy kills, and your shot accuracy. And again, the number of lives that you lost. So if you do get the gold medal, you can unlock ace mode, and there is a few secret levels as well. You can play as Darth Vader, and do the Death Star battle from Darth Vader's perspective. You can pilot the Millennium Falcon, as I said. You can also unlock there's a tech demo as well that Factor 5 produced for Nintendo, and again, so you have to accumulate the points via the medal system, and you can unlock them via the password if you're lazy like me and not very good at the game. You can even play as the TIE fighter. You can even play as Slave 1 as well. Boba Fett's a thing that they changed as well there. So yeah, so you could do that as well. You could even drive around in a 1969 Buick, if you wanted this. This was a car designed, the car owned by one of the game's sound designers. And speaking of the sound, it is excellent there as well. So there is a lot of unlockables and good replayability there. It is a fairly short game. It took me about 2.5 hours to beat the game. And that was, I have played it before, but I hadn't played it for a long time. And I remember this was one of the games I got at the GameCube's launch, because I bought a GameCube because I wanted to play Resident Evil Remake, but that wasn't out for a while in 2002. So I ended up buying one at launch. I got Luigi's Mansion and Rogue Squadron 2. And I ended up playing through Rogue Squadron 2 most of the time. Luigi's Mansion was decent, but again, Rogue Squadron 2 I was so surprised with, because I had the original Rogue Squadron on PC in the 90s, and it was okay. I thought, man, it's okay. But Rogue Squadron 2 just blew me away visually, just the difference there, and it showcased the power of the GameCube, and it really is a great visual showcase. It is a shame that it did sell well, but it's not revered and remembered as a classic GameCube game. I don't feel it is fairly cheap. I mean, it's available for very little money, and I think that's kind of sad, because the value of GameCube games is usually quite high. I mean, it is fairly cheap. It's under £10 for a GameCube game, and that is kind of crazy. Like a game like Resident Evil 2, not a remake, just a PlayStation port, sells for about £30 in the UK. So to get an original exclusive GameCube game for under £10, I saw it available for £6, Rogue Squadron 2. It's not a very rare game. It was one of the best selling games, launch games at least for the GameCube. So that's not surprising to see it at a low value, but I think this is underappreciated, and it's one of the GameCube's hidden gems. Definitely you should check this game out, because while its gameplay is fairly simple and it is fairly short, it works. What's there works. Its presentation is top notch. Again, playing this on a modern PC is just incredible. It looks like a 7th gen game. If you had told me that this was an Xbox 360 launch title, I'd have believed you. I would have really believed you, because it does look stunning. Factor 5 were geniuses, and it is sad that we've lost Factor 5 now. I think that is one of the sad things. Again, a casualty of the 7th generation after Lair on the PS3, with its gimmicky motion controls. Pretty awful. They should have stuck with real controls for Lair at least. And yeah, it's kind of sad that we lost Factor 5, but this is one of their hidden gems. This is one of their best games out there. Rogue Squadron 2. Rogue Squadron 3, Rebel Strike, I don't think was as good, to be honest with you. I didn't like the on-foot missions. Personally, I prefer just stick to these space missions. They were awesome. there. But that's one of the things. If you love the immersiveness, that's what we'll say. It's very immersive. If you're a fan of Star Wars games and want to become immersed in some of the space battles, then I would absolutely recommend you check out this game. It's just incredible. There, get it on an emulator, upscale it to 4K. Buying it on real hardware is fairly cheap as well. So it's not a particularly difficult game to find. It's not a particularly rare game, and so it's got a lot going for it. If you're building a GameCube collection, this is one of the must-buys, I would say. And again, it's great that it's available cheap as well. Because I love the presentation of the game. It really made you feel like you were actually in the movie, which is good, and that's what you want, you know, especially that first level. That first level is incredible. The other levels in the game are pretty good as well, but that first one is like the best, one of the best opening levels to a game that I've ever played. We'll maybe look at that later on. Best opening levels. Rogue Squadron 2 is definitely going to be up there. But anyway, yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. It can be, sometimes the missions can be a bit fiddly as to what exactly they want you to do. Like, they'll explain what they want you to do, but sans on how they want you to do it. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of figuring out for yourself. It will tell you, give you a hint on the game over screen as well, if you fail the mission a couple of times or run out of lives. But other than that, it's pretty decent as well. Sometimes the controls can be a bit fiddly, but once you get used to them, it's pretty good. And you kind of dial in. I'm not very accurate and I'm not the best at this game, but I get by, really. But yeah, I would suggest definitely that you check this out. It is an incredible visual showcase for the GameCube there. Anyway, that is all for this video, so thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again soon, and goodbye.